Pre-Algebra Lesson 8-7, More Applications of Percents. You are going to need to write this stuff down in your notes. It's very likely that you will not remember it. We have a formula here that is super important. This is a capital I here for interest equals capital P for principal times R, which is rate, times T, which is time. Make sure that you get that in your notes. Formulas are our friends. You need this formula. All right, so I'm hoping you already know what interest is. Like when you put money in the bank, if you put $100 in the bank at the end of the year, you'll have a little bit more than $100 because the bank pays you interest. This formula that we're working with is for simple interest. There is something else called compound interest, which you will learn about the next year. Simple interest keeps the process simple, okay? So I stands for interest. The P stands for principal. That means like the amount that you start out with. So if you're putting money in the bank, if you're putting $100 in the bank, that's the principal, the amount that you started out with. Or if it happens to be a borrowing situation, it's the amount that you borrowed. The rate is the percent, okay? If they say that the annual rate is 5%, notice that that gets written when we start doing our calculations. It gets written as a decimal. And then T means time. And in the calculations we're going to be doing, we're going to be expressing time in terms of years. Okay, so time is in terms of years. In this case, they did something for 6 months, and so we're going to call that half a year, or 0.5 years. But make sure you've got this formula. You will definitely need it. Okay, so for these next few problems, they just want you to write down what the formula will be for solving the problem. You don't actually have to solve it, but all of these things start with interest equals principal times rate times time. Okay, so they all go from there. So I, interest, is question mark. So we're going to put X there. Equals principal is 100 times rate is 4%. So we're going to put 0.04 because we need that to be expressed as a decimal, times time, which is 2 years. And if you were actually solving that, you'd just go ahead and multiply those three numbers together and you'd have your answer. Now, in the first one, interest was the thing that was missing. But in the second one, rate is the thing that's missing. Actually, I guess instead of X, I really should have put I there for interest. Okay, so over here, we still go back to I equals PRT. So I is 9, interest is 9, principal is 150, times rate we don't know, so we're just going to put R for that, and then time is 2 years. That one's going to be a little more complicated to solve, but that's okay. Here we're just setting it up. Okay, again, we go back to I equals PRT. Interest is 10. Principal is 200. Rate is 0.05. And time is the unknown, so we'll put times T. And finally, number 4, interest is 30. Principal is unknown, so we'll put the P, times rate 0.03, and time is 4 years. Okay. Again, in this lesson, word problems are going to be very important. We should maybe have that formula memorized by now. Interest equals principal times rate times time. And let's go ahead and apply it to number 5. Jules borrowed $500 for 3 years at a simple interest rate of 6%. How much interest will be due at the end of 3 years? How much will Jules have to repay? Okay, so how much interest? So interest is the thing that we do not know. So we're going to put I for that. Principal is the amount that he borrowed, 500. Rate is always going to be that percent number expressed as a decimal, 0.06. And time in years is 3. So times 3. Then you just go ahead and put that all in your calculator. It's a simple multiplication problem, and you'll have your answer. And the calculator tells us that I equals $90. That's what I equals. Question asks, how much interest will be due at the end of 3 years? Well, $90 does answer that, but the question also asks, how much will Jules have to repay? So he will have to repay the $500 that he borrowed plus the $90 interest, which makes $590 that he will have to repay. Okay, number 6 tells us Karen maintained a balance of $250 in her savings account for 8 years. The financial institution paid simple interest of 4%. What was the amount of interest earned? So again, we'll start with our formula. I equals PRT. And again, it says what was the amount of interest, so that's the unknown. I equals principal, it's the amount deposited, 250, rate, 4% as a decimal, and time in terms of years, 8 years. Again, all you have to do is put that in your calculator, and you will have your answer. Okay, and when you multiply those 3 numbers together, you would get $80, which represents I. $80 in interest. And this time the question just asks, what was the amount of interest? So we've already got our answer. All right, we need to work a few problems that are just a little more complicated, but we still have our same formula. Quang deposits money in an account that earns 5% simple interest. He earned $546 in interest 2 years later. How much did he deposit? The how much did he deposit goes with principal, so that's the thing we don't know. Interest, it says he earned $546 in interest. So 546 where the I goes. Principal, we don't know, so we'll put the letter P. The rate is 5%, 0.05, and the time was 2 years. Okay, so solving this is just a little bit more complicated. First, we're going to do the 0.05 times 2, which equals 0.1. And then in order to get P by itself, we're going to have to divide both sides by 0.1. That'll leave P over here, and then we'll have to do 546 divided by 0.1. And that comes out to $5,460. And of course, ask yourself if that makes sense, because we're looking for the amount that the person put in the bank. And actually, it makes a lot of sense because it's 10% over the 2 years was his interest, which was 546. So it makes a lot of sense. Okay, number 8. Simon opened a certificate of deposit with the money from his bonus check. A certificate of deposit might be something you've never heard of before. It's also referred to as a CD, but of course that's different from like a music CD. It's just a product you can buy from the bank where you agree to leave your money in there for, in this case, 3 years. And they agree to the interest rate of 4.5%, which is probably more than what regular savings accounts are getting. So in any case, 4.5% for 3 years. And then it says Simon calculated that he would earn $87.75 interest in that time. How much did Simon deposit to open the account? So again, P, the principal, the starting amount, is the missing item. Interest is given at 87.75. P is unknown. Rate is 0.045, and time is 3. So just like in the last problem, we're going to go ahead and do the 0.045 time, and that equals 0.135. To get P by itself, we have to divide by 0.135. Need to do that on both sides. These ones cancel out, leaving you with P equals. And when you do this division problem right here, you get 650. 650 was the amount that Simon put in the first place. And of course, you can always check then. You can take the 650 and multiply it times 0.045 and times 3, and it should come out to the interest of 87.75. So that's all very checkable. All right, question number 9 is a little more interesting. Douglas borrowed $1,000 from Patricia. He agreed to repay her $1,150 after 3 years. What was the interest rate of the loan? Okay, so let's look at these two numbers here. He borrowed $1,000 from her, and he paid her back $1,150. And so 1,000 of that was just paying back the 1,000 that he borrowed. So how much interest did he pay? Well, he paid the difference, which was $150 in interest. So we know the interest, and we know the time, and we know the principal, and they are asking us for the rate. So rate is the unknown thing. Interest, 150. Principal, 1,000. Rate, unknown. And time, 3. We're going to do 1,000 times 3, which is going to be 3,000 times R. Then to get R by itself, we'll divide both sides by 3,000. This becomes R, and we'll do the 150 divided by 3,000. That comes out to 0.05. Question was, what was the interest rate? And you do need to write that in terms of percent and not as a decimal. So take your 0.05 and make it 5%. All right, let's do one more problem. It's sort of interesting. Number 10, what is the interest paid for a loan of $800 at 5% annual interest for 9 months? And the only thing that's interesting about this is the 9 months. Remember that our time is in terms of years. So that 9 months is 9 months out of 12 months, which when you simplify that, that's 3/4 of the year, or as a decimal, 0.75 years. So 0.75 for the time, and that's really the only interesting part. What was the interest paid? That means I is the unknown. The loan is the principal of 800. The rate is 0.05. And the time is 0.75. So when these ones where interest is the unknown, all you have to do is multiply those three numbers together. All right, when you multiply those, you get 30, and that would be $30 interest paid.